Most traders do research by opening a notebook and tossing on a few indicators and then praying that something looks good. That's not a process. That's chaos. In this episode, I'm going to show you the 5-step workflow that we actually use in our quant hedge fund to go from idea all the way to backtest. And then I'm going to show you what it looks like in our real platform. I'm actually going to show you a live strategy today running on a backtest. All right. Your time is valuable, and I don't want to hold you hostage. So here's exactly what we're going to cover today. First, we're going to cover our 5-step research workflow. And this is what we use to go from a vague market idea to a testable strategy. Second, we're going to show you how that workflow looks inside our real hedge fund platform. I'm going to give you a quick behind the scenes demo of how we run strategies and do backtesting research for real. Third, we're going to cover the biggest mistake that I see new quants making and how this workflow keeps you from fooling yourself. All right, and then finally, at the end, I'm going to show you where you can see the full system live, a full 1-hour demo where we do a deep dive, and you'll be invited along the way. All right, quick disclaimer. So nothing in this video is financial advice. This is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Always do your own research and talk to a qualified financial professional before making any investment decisions. All right, with that out of the way, welcome. I'm Matt Dancho. I'm the co-founder of Quant Science, and this series is called Building a Quant Hedge Fund in Python. We're actually running real strategies on real capital using Python. And in this episode, what I'm going to be doing is covering the exact quant research workflow that I use, and we're going to use it before we risk a single dollar on a new idea. All right, let's move into it. So whenever we come up with a new idea, what we do is we use this 5-step research workflow. So whether it's, conceptually, whether it's like we think momentum is going to work or quality is going to work or low volatility is safer, we don't just start coding it. What we do is we run it through a 5-step research workflow. And you can see the 5 steps right here: hypothesis, factor, universe data, backtest, and evaluate. Okay. We're going to walk through each one of these here, and then I'm going to show you exactly how we do this in our hedge fund. So the first step is hypothesis. And instead of saying, let's try some indicators, what we do is we write a plain English statement that we can actually test, okay? So for example, that might be a hypothesis, can't say that, a hypothesis that we might have is among a universe of large cap US stocks. We'll say those with a stronger 6 to 12 month momentum, their performance tend to outperform over the next month compared to other stocks that don't have that high, trend. That might be our hypothesis. But then what we need to do is we need to actually frame that up so we can test it. So that's where we move into step 2, which is our factor. All right. So the factor is going to be the signal. That's the thing that we want to test, and we want to algorithmically come up with that signal. And what we'll do is we'll use Python. We'll translate that hypothesis into a specific measurement. So for a momentum idea, we'll take that as an example. That might be the 12-month return, okay? So we might exclude the most recent month, which is very common for momentum strategies, and then we might even try and dress it up a little bit, use some combination of, say, a 6-month and a 12-month score and do like an average or something like that. The key is we need to come up with some sort of calculation. That's going to be the signal, and that signal needs to be clearly defined. It cannot be vague. The third thing, the universe, okay? So what we're doing is we got to decide which stocks or investments are we going to test on. So are we talking the S&P 500 large cap? Are we talking global developed markets? Are we talking some sector, specific sector of the market? And what data are we going to be using? Are we going to be using daily prices? Are we going to be using fundamentals, adjusted splits and dividends, macroeconomic indicators? What data are we going to be using? Okay. So what we do is we take a universe and we want to lock it down. So we want to kind of pare it down to figure out what we're going to be using to test our hypothesis on. All right. Then what we're going to do is once we have all of that stuff outlined, we're going to then move into backtesting. Okay. So we do need to design, we got to think of the backtest like it's an experiment, right? So if you remember back, I don't know if you've ever taken a course on how to like set up an experiment, but what you have to do is you have to come up with an evaluation and turn your backtest into a set of parameters that are going to be testable, all right? And this is going to be our experiment design. Think of it like that. So we're going to use a simple rules-based strategy. We're going to think of things like how often are we going to rebalance? Is it going to be every month, once a month? Is it going to be every day? Is it going to be intraday? Those types of things. How do we re-rank and select stocks out of this backtest? How do we size positions? This is another area. Is it going to be equal weight? Is it going to be long or short? Are we going to do some risk-based or something, even more special? It doesn't have to be perfect or fancy at this point. It just has to be something that we can test. So perfection will come later, or what I call optimization. But for now, what we want to do is we want to see if it performs better than some sort of benchmark. And the goal here is a clean and repeatable experiment. Okay. And then once we run the back test, so we've framed it up, we're now running the back test on our hypothesis, and then we're going to get some outputs. It takes a little bit for these to run. So usually what I do is I run them overnight, and then the next morning I'll review the back test results. So that's where step 5, evaluate and decide, comes in play. So in step 5, we don't just want to admire, what's called the equity curve. That's like you're going to be like the main curve for our portfolio that tracks its performance over time. So that's one thing you can look at, but that's not the only thing. So we need to look at performance versus a benchmark. That's one thing. We need to look at things like max drawdown. We need to look at volatility or risk-adjusted returns, stability over time, volatility, Sharpe ratio, and all sorts of different ways that we can analyze these strategies. Okay. So what we want to do is we want our decision to be made holistically. We don't want to just kind of like, because it got a high returns in 1 month, feel like it's going to be repeatable the next month. What we need to see is statistical evidence. Okay. And that's going to help us make that decision. So we're going to try to decide at this stage, based on what comes out, are we going to kill the strategy, meaning it didn't perform well at all? Are we going to refine the strategy, meaning it probably outperformed the benchmark, but maybe we think we can do better? Or is it already ready for promotion? And usually this is going to be when you're kind of through that optimization stage that I talked about. So my point here is that every real strategy that we run in our hedge fund has gone through this exact same process, and you need to follow a process like this, and that's going to be your system. So this is going to be, also think of it like a pipeline. So we've got the idea, the factor, the universe, the back test, the decision. All 5 of these steps are going to be critical, and this is how we're going to avoid falling in love with, say, one lucky back test, and then it falls apart in active trading or in real life. Okay. And that's going to cost you a lot of money if you fall in love with these strategies that are not sustainable. All right, so let's talk about the demo that we're going to run today. So there's kind of 4 things that I want to cover with you, or actually 5 things. I want to talk through each one of these different stages, but I want to show you guys exactly how we implement that inside of our hedge fund. So I'm going to switch over. I'm going to head over to some code over here. So what I'm going to share with you guys today is actually in Python. This is a example strategy that I just ran inside of our hedge fund. Okay. So what I did here, this code here, gives us a momentum strategy similar to what we've just talked about, but we do it on a full scale level. All right. So let me explain kind of what we're going to be showing you here. The most important thing, if I scroll down here, is going to be this thing called the configuration. So we're going to take that hypothesis, which is we think that there's some sort of momentum indicator that we can create that will identify stocks that are going to be more likely to have a higher return over the next month. All right. So we're going to create some sort of hypothesis. And then what we're going to do is we're going to codify it. And that's where this thing, this function here comes into play. So what this is going to do is it's going to create a column that's based on a fast and a slow period return. And then it's going to get standardized using this standardization feature. So I don't expect you guys to understand this calculation, but basically this is one way to calculate a momentum feature. All right. So this is going to calculate the 252-day momentum, and it's going to score our stocks. Okay. So next, what we need to do is we need to figure out how to run our back tests. So now that we've kind of codified a way to come up with a feature based on this price information for every single stock, what we want to do is we want to test that indicator. So that's where the back test comes into play. So what we do in our hedge fund is we've adopted what's called a configuration. So what this does is it allows us to specify every single part of the back test that we care about. It has features in here to control how the experiment is tracked. Are we going to save it into our database? That's what's covered here. It has backtest parameters. So what date range are we going to run this across? What's the initial capital that we're going to start out for the strategy? Which bundle of data are we going to use? What's the benchmark that we're going to use? And when we calculate and we analyze during every backtest region, what region of data are we going to pull in? So this is all handled right here in this configuration file. There's also additional stuff that we can kind of fine tune this strategy. So we can discuss, what's the rebalance schedule? Are we going to rebalance at the start of every month, the third day of every month? Are we going to rebalance 30 minutes or 60 minutes after the market opens? We can integrate that into our schedule. We can also integrate transaction costs. And the fact is that every time we make a trade, there's a commission. There's also the potential for slippage and other things that will affect and actually reduce your profit. So you have to keep track of that stuff. And then we can also add other things like stop losses and kind of advanced techniques to kind of track, like if you want to implement, like what's called a trailing stop, if your stock drops, say 10% from where you put in or from its most recent high, you can decide to trade out of that stock. So that's what we can implement that here. Then the most important part is going to be, how do we process this data? So I had mentioned, are we just going to use the S&P 500? In reality, what we normally do is we take a big ecosystem of stocks. So we want to figure out how many stocks do we have access to. And in our hedge fund, we have over 90,000 equities and ETFs that we have historical data on that we can trade. So we want to use that as our starting point. And then what we want to do is we want to pare it down before we run our more intensive algorithms on it to screen out, say, stocks that might have a high volatility, or screen out stocks that are less than a minimum average price or a minimum last price. And we want to be able to kind of pick from, we'll say, higher quality stocks, or you might want to loosen these to let some more volatile stocks in. Then we're going to pre-process. So financial data ends up being somewhat dirty. So there's oftentimes that we have to clean up that data. We're going to run it through a pre-processor next. And then we're going to add that signal, that feature. So this is the momentum feature that we're going to add. Basically, it's just a 252-day momentum. And then once we've done all of these pre-processing steps, we're going to send it to our algorithm. The algorithm is going to do some sort of combination of, all right, we've got this data and we want to rank these stocks. Okay, so we're going to use a function called useFactor as signal. All that does is it's basically going to say, all right, the signal that you have told me here, it's going to be this predictor column. We want to look at that. We're going to use that as the ranking metric. It's a very simple kind of methodology. Then what it's going to do is it's going to assign a rank to every single stock, and from high to low. And then what we're going to do is we're going to apply some sort of portfolio strategy. And then this is where it can get into kind of the more complex ideas or techniques, like we can do long short portfolios, we can do an equal weight portfolio, we can do an exponentially weighted portfolio, we can apply sort of risk techniques at this point. It can actually get quite complex once you get to the portfolio strategy. Okay, and then what we're going to do is, once we have that configuration defined based on the data set that we're going to use, the universe, and all of the things that we want to implement to control how the strategy runs, then we're going to run it through this run backtest function. Okay, so I'll do this for you while we're on the call here. I'll show you what it looks like. So to run it, we can run this programmatically. So if I run, if I do Python and I point it to experiments and I point it to factor, ad hoc, and then simple momentum. And if we do this, what it's going to do is it's going to kick off a new backtest. So you're going to see it start to run right here. All right, while that's running, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip over here and I'm going to show you the ML flow backend. So what we do in our hedge fund is we actually track every single backtest that we do. This is very important because as we do research, we want to accumulate that. We want to learn from everything. So this momentum factor, you can see just a few seconds ago, I turned it on. But I actually ran the same example, started at 26 minutes ago, took about 10.6 minutes to run, and then it created a model that we can use in production if we decide it's a good strategy. So how do we decide if it's a good strategy? Well, that's where the metrics come in. So I'm going to add a few columns here. What I'm going to do, I'll take off these two, and we're going to do returns. So the portfolio total return, we're going to do Sharp, and we'll look at the portfolio daily Sharp. And then what we're going to do is look at the max drawdown. So let me look at portfolio max drawdown. Okay, so what I can see here just very quickly is that we've got a Sharp of about 1.57. That's not great, but not terrible. Total return of about 170%. And then a drawdown over this period of negative 31%. Okay, so these are metrics that we can then start to compare and contrast different backtests on. And if I drill into this, one other thing that we want to track lots of different metrics. So there might be other things that you want to look at as well. So certainly you would want to compare it against like a benchmark. So benchmark daily Sharp 1.25, we were at like a 1.6 or a 1.7. So we're definitely beating the benchmark, but we're not beating. I mean, we're beating it. It's a good start. The other thing that you want to do, and what we track, is we track everything from the configuration. So we have that stored here, and this is so we can actually take it into production with our model. We track all of the manifests. So this is a text-based version of that config file. So we can keep track of what settings we actually ran and how this backtest was produced. We keep track of the performance. We also create performance reports, and these are good for visually diagnosing and comparing different ways of analyzing these trading strategies. So for example, commonly what most traders do will look at this equity curve here. So the returns performance, we can see we're doing better. This is the benchmark. Benchmark was up about, what is this? We'll say 144, and we're at 270. So we're about double the benchmark. But you can see that we also have a little bit higher drawdowns than the benchmark as well. So we're taking on a little bit more risk. And we can do a full kind of returns analysis, look at different charts. We can see in 2024, we are up about 53%. 2025, now 2025 is not over yet, but we're up about 60% in 2025. The strategy is doing pretty good. It's definitely a great start. These are different ways. We also have other types of analyses. We'll get into these maybe a little bit later in another video. But there's other frameworks like a transactional framework, a factor framework, and these are just different frameworks for analyzing our factor portfolio. And then we also keep track of other information as well. So this is really how we take a backtest and this concept of a backtest and really run it through kind of we'll say a full research workflow where everything's tracked, it's reproducible, we can test it, we can see how it was created, we can track the parameters that created the metrics, and the metrics are the outputs, and we can track a lot of stuff along the way. Now, there's a lot of other stuff that we do. Kind of the backtest, though, is very, very foundational, and that's a key component of our research. I'll talk about some of these other more advanced techniques in some later videos, but that is kind of how we do just the most, at a basic level, run a backtest. Okay, now for the mistakes. So let me end with why this workflow matters so much to us. And there are 4 key mistakes that I see time and time again, especially with like new algorithmic traders, some of our newer students, or traders that are just kind of like, how I was when I was younger, or before I got deep into this. So these are 4 key mistakes that you may run into as well. First mistake, random indicator hunting. Okay, so this is what I used to do. I used to try and do like these simple moving average strategies. So this is very common. People on YouTube a lot will just kind of throw out tons and tons of different strategies, and none of them actually work. So the problem here is that you guys, when they throw these out, they're showing you cool stuff like code. They're showing you, but they open a notebook, they do like a MACD or a Bollinger Band or something that looks good, and they call it a strategy. The problem is there's no hypothesis, there's no structure, there's no formatted approach. So we start with a hypothesis. We need to come up with some sort of factor, some sort of way of taking an idea and converting it into and codifying it into some sort of rule. And that forces yourself, why is that important? It forces you to be very explicit about what edge you think you have, and what, more importantly, what do you think is going to relate to some sort of probability that you're going to make money in the future from making these trades. Okay, so very important to have this framework. Mistake number 2, that's this one down here, is uncontrolled data and overfitting. So what commonly new quants will do, or new algorithmic traders, what they do is they change the universe and date range midstream, or they accidentally use future data. We call this data snooping, or they tweak parameters until the equity curve looks, finally like they got like a moving average, like 49 and 250, like just works perfectly, where I actually finally have a strategy that passes my back test. And what ends up happening is these strategies become very fragile. So they only work kind of like on paper, and then you try and move them into production or live trading, and they fall apart. And these new traders, what ends up happening, they lose money. Okay. The problem is that they're kind of fine tuning, and they're essentially overfitting to this kind of noisy data set. So what we do is we lock down the universe and the data, and using a consistent backtest design, this gives you and us a chance at results that actually mean something. And then what we do is we use that statistical significance. What we do is we analyze the returns over different frameworks, and what these do is it helps us come up with a decision about whether or not the strategy is likely to work in the future. The third mistake, no decision framework. So a lot of new traders just kind of willy-nilly kind of go into it. They find a strategy that somebody gives them online, and they just run with it, right? So they'll run piles of back tests and have no criteria for what good looks like. And the problem is that if you don't know what good looks like, you don't kill the bad ideas quickly. So you need to get rid of the bad ideas. Anything that is not beating the benchmark, you need to get rid of it. So conversely, if you have an evaluate and decision step in your framework as a formal step, you're going to go through that process of killing bad ones, bad strategies, refining the good ones, and promoting the best ones. And that's going to give you a process that gives you a chance at success. And when you do that, you're going to build a real research pipeline, not just kind of a graveyard for notebooks, right? All right, then the fourth mistake, expecting a magic strategy instead of building a workflow. So again, I see a lot of new traders, what they want to do is they want somebody to just give them some perfect strategy. The reality is you have to actually test these strategies. We test them literally nightly. We run a nightly back test every single night, and we even do research, full parameter, optimizations and parameter tweaking to find the most stable parameters, and we're running those every single night to see if there's any better parameters out there or if our models are drifting. So the workflow, it doesn't necessarily guarantee success, but what it does is it dramatically lowers the odds that you're going to fool yourself. And if you fool yourself, that's what that's the worst thing that can happen. You can trust and fall in love with this strategy that you think works because you back tested it, but it doesn't actually work in the reality. So those are the four key mistakes: random indicator hunting, uncontrolled data and overfitting, no decision framework, and expecting a magic strategy instead of building a workflow. All right, so let's recap. What we did today, we walked through the 5-step research workflow that we actually use in our quant hedge fund. What are those steps? It's hypothesis, it's come up with a factor, it's then get the universe and data, then come up with a backtest design, and then finally evaluate and decide on what to do with the results. Okay. Then I showed you specifically how we actually run this inside of our quant hedge fund, and this shows you so you can actually see like not only just the theory, but also see like practically how we're applying what I just talked about inside of our hedge fund to have success. Now, I do have one other thing. So if you want to see the full version of the hedge fund platform that I showed you, we do a much deeper dive. We do a 1-hour live demo every 2 weeks. So I'll drop the link in the video. You can also get the link in the video notes as well. And what we do is we show how we research strategies, we track performance, we also manage risk, we run the whole automation for you so you can see it end to end in that workshop. And it's live, so you can actually ask us questions. I'll be on there live, so will Jason, my co-founder, and it's really a good way for you to learn more about how these strategies work. And we go much deeper than we can in a short YouTube video. So there's a link in the description. I've also pinned it in the comment. If you want to grab a spot in the next section, click that link, and you can join us and register for the training. All right. Next steps. So if you haven't watched episode 1 yet, so this is episode number 2. Episode 1, what I do is I explain all the stuff that you're probably missing and you might be curious about right now when we talk about building a quant hedge fund in Python. And I walk through the full architecture of the data, the research, the portfolio, the execution, all of that stuff. The remaining videos are all kind of going to talk about different aspects of running the hedge fund, also how you can create your own hedge fund, and you can start to build on what we're building. And definitely go back and watch that video. It'll give you the big picture so you guys can actually understand the 10,000 foot view. In the next episode, what I'm going to be covering is how we manage risk. So if you like this episode, you're going to love that episode. It's coming in a couple of weeks. So we're going to talk about position sizing, portfolio level constraints, and how we handle drawdowns and do all sorts of stuff to manage risk. So that's coming, and it's going to help you see how we actually take our strategies and make them investable so we reduce the probability that we're going to lose money. And then also, I have a small request. To help me decide what to go deeper on, please drop a comment and tell me which part of today's episode got you most excited and what you wanted to see more of. Okay, so do you want to see more of the 5-step workflow itself, behind the scenes of the hedge fund demo, and how we run other strategies, other back tests, how we scale back tests up? Or is there something else in the research pipeline that I didn't cover in enough detail? Please just let me know. And whatever it is for you, I will post it in the comments below. I will read it, and that'll help me decide what to make in the future. Okay. And then also, if you're already doing research as well, let me know what your biggest bottleneck is right now. What are you struggling with? Is it data, backtesting? Is it organizing experiments? Is it evaluating strategies? What is it? And I can help you with that as well. And it'll give me ideas for new videos. All right, I will see you soon. I'm Matt, and take care, and we'll see you in about 2 weeks. Also, check out that video, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That'll help you get notified when we come up with new videos. All right, I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.